Welcome to American Dreams, Keys to Success, with your host, Alan Olson.
Welcome back. I have here today with me Conrad Hewitt. Conrad became the chief accountant of the Security and Exchange Commission in 2006. Among his responsibilities was the oversight of the Financial Accounting Standard Board, also known as FASB, and the Public Accounting Oversight Board, also known as the PCAOB. Conrad, welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Alan. I'm very pleased to be here with you today.
So, Conrad, these are remarkable positions, and actually, I think to get to be the chief accountant of the SEC, it's not an appointed position.
That's correct. You have to go through interviews and postings, and there's competition for this position. It's
a highly coveted position?
It is, because you're the number one person in accounting and auditing in the United States and also probably throughout the world.
Kind of like the god of accounting?
Yeah, it's as far up as you can go in the accounting world. And the reason I did it, I figured it was a good way to finish my career in accounting and cap it off.
I remember when I was at the Big Four, we'd always have a person that was nominated to be partner. Would take 2 years. He would go down to the FASB, spend some time working in that. And then, is it located in Connecticut?
Yeah, Stanford, Connecticut. FASB is still there, a 2-year fellowship program. And at the SEC, we have the same type of program, SEC fellow.
So let's let me digress a little bit. Conrad, give me some of your background, for the viewers here, and your career in accounting. And
Sure. I really grew up in Sheffield, Illinois, a very small farming community, and we had about 1,000 population. But when I grew up there, it was very industrious because we supported all the farmers around there, small farmers, which no longer exist. And my mother was in the banking business. She started at age 18, and she retired at age 70, a very long career. And
Good career,
She'll be 104 in October. And my father owned a tavern. They both worked, very industrious type people, and they made me do the same. They made me mow lawns, and I would have to go and wash the windows downtown. I became the janitor in the bank. So I did a lot of things that they wanted me to do, and they got me involved with the Boy Scouts, and I was active in sports. And so I kind of grew up in that atmosphere. And neither one of them had a college education, but they insisted that I go on and receive higher education. I wanted to go to University of Notre Dame. I asked my parents if I could go there because I'd been there for the football game. They said no, could not afford it. So I ended up at the University of Illinois, and I went there and had a 4-year academic tuition scholarship, and started in aeronautical engineering. And I didn't like the summer school. Came from very small high school, 23 in my class. That was a big class. But
what made you go into accounting? I remember I was 2 years in the college. What do I want to graduate in? And what point in time did you make the decision, I want to be an accountant?
Well, I never really wanted to be an accountant as such. After that summer school in aeronautical engineering, I decided that was not my career. So I entered the College of Business, and I said, I probably want to be a banker. Maybe I'll go back to where I grew up and be a banker there in Sheffield, Illinois, like my mother. And as I got in, accounting was very easy for me when I took the courses. But I wanted to be more of a financial person, a banker. And so I ended up receiving my degree in finance with a minor in accounting. And then I had a commission in the Air Force. And when I got to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, I was second lieutenant, and they said, "What would you like to do, Lieutenant?" I said, "I'd like to do something related to banking." Well, we don't have banks in the Air Force.
Okay.
They probably should, but they don't. But we need auditors. I said, "I never had a course in auditing." They said, "Well, we have a 3-month school at Shepherd Air Force Base, and we'll send it." I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And I did that, and there was only 6 or 7 of us going through that school. And I was stationed at the SAC headquarters in Omaha, Nebraska, assigned to the Pentagon. And I had such great fun and responsibilities that I really enjoyed auditing and accounting. I took some more accounting courses at night there. And then I decided to go in public accounting as a career. because I thought I wanted to become a CPA. And so I ended up in California with Ernst & Ernst, and I did pass
Which
my
at that
CPA.
time was one of the Big 10?
Big Eight.
Big Eight?
Yeah,
Okay.
Big
Yeah.
Eight. And until 1989 when they merged with Arthur Young and became the Big Six firm at that time.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I got into the accounting arena.
Well, Conrad, and then you moved out from the Big Four. Was it the Big Four at the time that you moved on, or
No, when I
Big Six?
retired, it was a Big Six.
Okay.
And the Big Four didn't come along until the other firms, Deloitte and Touche, merged and so forth after that time.
So we're visiting here today with Conrad Hewitt. Conrad was the chief accountant at the Security and Exchange Security and Exchange Commission. And that's known as the number one accounting seat in the nation. We're going to spend some time talking to Conrad about his duties and responsibilities at the SEC. We'll be right back after these messages.
Protecting your family's health and welfare is a sacred trust. At Greenstein Raghav Olsen Company, we know that sound financial planning will protect them now and in the future. We're certified public accountants with tax services for the highly successful. For your business and your family, call GrowCo.
Greenstein Raghav Olsen Company will help you manage your financial affairs so you can focus on what's really important in life.
GrowCo, helping you along the way.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olson.
Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Conrad Hewitt. In 2006, Conrad became the chief accountant of the Security and Exchange Commission. And as such, he had oversight to the Financial Accounting Standards Board and the PCAOB, which looks at the Public Company Oversight Board. So when you're at the SEC, what role do they play in protecting the businesses?
Well, the SEC,
or in protecting the investors, I should say.
Yeah, they have two missions in their regulation and supervision of registrants, which there are about 15,000 registered companies, public companies, with the SEC, and their mission is really to protect investors, and there's all kinds and types of investors. There's the financial analysts with mutual funds. There are people like you, Alan, that invest maybe on your own in a retail type.
I know how to
investor.
lose money just as good as anyone else. Probably better.
and then you have the big investment banks investing, and so, but they have to cater. The SEC has to cater to all those different types of investors to protect them. But when I was a commissioner of the Department of Financial Institutions in the state of California, which I did after I retired from Ernst & Young, I had the same role of regulation and supervision, but my protection business there was to protect you as a depositor at the bank.
So you were overseeing all the bank deposits
all the financial institutions in the state of
Wow.
California, and that was a 4-year enjoyment challenge to me. And then I went into public company boards and private company, and then I was asked to become the chief
What are
accountant.
some of the boards you served on? Just curious here.
The kinds of boards?
Yeah, public company
They
board.
were all quite a variety. You think with my banking background and so forth, I would a high-tech company, insurance type, startup companies, and there were transportation. There were really different types of board, and bank board, of course.
So you're so when you moved out from the banking as the chief banker overseer here in California, you moved over to the SEC.
That was about 4 years later.
Okay.
I was asked to,
And then you find yourself suddenly in the number one seat at the SEC as the chief accountant.
right. And as you mentioned, the oversight of Financial Accounting Standards Board was primary responsibility, along with the new PCOB created by Sarbanes Act, SOX, and that was that was a new.
So you saw SOX unfolding.
I sure did, and then a couple of things happened when I first got there at the SEC. Backdating the stock options was just starting, and I had a lot of all that was basically accounting or legal, and so I had to work with the Justice Department, had to work with the Enforcement Division on backdating. We had over 100 cases of
Wow.
backdating of stock options. So, and some of those were convictions and so forth. And they had other things going on. But then what really happened?
So I'm curious, would they call you a cop with an accounting degree?
I haven't heard that term. I was in the press a lot for one reason or another, but I never heard that term, being the cop.
But basically, you're there to enforce white-collar crime.
That was part of it. The Ponzi schemes and those types of things, the SEC, any place where there's fraud involved, whether it's a registered company or not, the SEC has the 1934 Congressional Act. They have the power to investigate frauds like Ponzi schemes and those types, insider trading, and those types of.
You must have had your hands full over there with all the things that were happening and unfolding at that time, because with the advent of the baby. I guess the dot bomb is what I called it. The breaking down. There was all sorts of stuff that was unfolding.
Yeah, there was. What really took a lot of my time and focus, and everybody else at the commission, the commissioners and the chairman and all the staff people there, was the financial crisis. We started with AIG having their problems, and then Bear Stearns, and then Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, and as you know, the market just started to crash then, and all the banks had problems with valuing their securities at fair market value, and that took an enormous amount of time.
Hey, Conrad, I need to take a quick break. Can I get you to hold over for another segment? We're here today visiting with Conrad Hewitt. He's the chief accountant appointed in 2006 at the Security and Exchange Commission. We'll be right back after these messages. Nothing's more important than spending time with your family. At Winston, Raghav, Olson Company, we're trusted advisors to the highly successful. Our goal is to help you find the right strategy to protect your wealth for yourself and those you love. Kids, why do I feel like I've just had an audit? As trusted advisors to the highly successful, we'll make sure that you don't lose your shirt.
Roco helping you along the way.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olson.
Welcome back. I'm here with Conrad Hewitt. Conrad, in 2006, became the chief accountant of the Security and Exchange Commission. And as we were talking before the break, you were there when it began to unravel. The Lehman Brothers and the Bear Stearns and wow, that must have been really, really quite a time in your position there.
You're right, Alan. It was a big challenge for all of us at the SEC, all the various staffs, the trading and marketing, the office of the chief accountant, which I had. And because one of the problems that was happening with all the financial institutions, and it was an accounting problem, was the fact that they would have to value their securities at fair value. And as the market was going down, they were incurring losses, and it would require the Federal Reserve and all the other regulators would require additional capital. And so the banks almost panic on it. They would come and meet with me and my staff, and they would ask us to suspend the accounting rule on fair value, and so you could restore everything at historical cost at 100%. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because, for example, if you were an investor and you're CEO of the bank, and you were an investor in a bank, another bank, and you were thinking that they were valuing all their securities at 100% when it should be only 50% and there was losses. Would you want to invest in that bank or be an investor? Is that fair to the investors? And I think I got the message to them. But that was not only with commercial banks, but the J.P. Morgans and the Goldman Sachs had the same problem. AIG had the same problem valuing their credit default swaps, which was almost trillions of dollars. Then we had the subprime mortgages, which was an off-balance sheet for the banks, and that was wrong. It finally got corrected after I left, but I kept pushing to get it changed.
I'm curious here. The mark-to-market rules on the banks, they never really conform with that. Yeah, and that's just for the listeners. Let's say that the bank gives a loan on a building or a home,
right?
And let's say that the loan's $1 million, but the home has fallen in value to $750,000. So they got $1 million loan, $750,000 of collateral,
Right.
and the banks are currently saying, Mark to Market was saying, you need to devalue your property to what the actual market value. Well, the banks aren't doing that.
Well, they are now. Back then, they were not doing as they should be. But the regulators, the banking regulators, became much tougher with the banks after the financial crisis. They probably should have been tougher before on all this, and it would have abetted the financial downfall of our country and overseas, like the subprime mortgages debacle.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask this question. You may not know, but so the banks are doing this with their assets, underlying assets. Are the Federal Reserves doing that with the banks?
Well, that I cannot answer.
Okay. I think I had lunch. Actually, it was a dinner with one of the Federal Reserve Board presidents, and I asked this question, and his response was the same.
I worked with the Federal Reserve a lot over the years, and they're very qualified people, basically, but they have a very difficult job to concern our monetary policy in the United States, and now it's a global monetary policy.
Yeah, it's not an easy job. Well, let's move back into the SEC role.
Sure.
Bernie Madoff. I mean, sure, the listeners are probably thinking, okay, let's hear your take on this.
Well, over a 10-year period at the SEC, there was at least 2 or 3 tips about Bernie Madoff and his way of making money for the investors, and those were investigated. It was before my time, and they were investigated, and nothing really came out of it. And the SEC never had the methodology or the technology to keep track of these. They would receive thousands every year of tips on Ponzi schemes, and they would investigate them. And the problem, when they get a tip, they don't know if it's a $1 billion Ponzi scheme or $100,000 Ponzi. There's no way to estimate what the cash flow is coming in from the investors and being returned. And so eventually it explodes and it ends. And that's true of almost every Ponzi scheme that's been happening over the last 50 years.
I can only imagine being in the position of chief accountant during these years and seeing everything in the news and unfolding. I'm sure the thought crossed your mind more than once. I think it's time to get out.
I decided I did a lot during my 3 years at the SEC. I accomplished many things that I wanted to accomplish when I went there. And I said, with the new administration in, I was not appointed, but it's a tradition at the SEC that you automatically submit your resignation to the chairman when a new administration comes in. And my wife and I gave up a lot to move back there for 3 years. We had to liquidate all our investments that Congress did not have to do. I could not have a blind trust. And so we liquidated, and that was a financial loss for about 6 or 7 months because I had stock options that were really making a lot of money for me after I liquidated them. But then the crash came, and I'm way ahead.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, then it was a good side on one side of it was you had to liquidate, then, but the other side, you just got out in time for when it really began to escalate with the debt crisis there.
Right.
So
all my investments at that time were either in treasuries or CDs or money markets or whatever.
So you've had a remarkable career, Conrad. If you were to give some advice back to a person aspiring to start a business or they're at the beginning of their career in their life, what advice would you give to them?
Well, that's an excellent question. I've given it a lot of thought because I have 4 children, and I gave them some of my philosophies about 3 or 4 years ago along the same line. Be very flexible. If you want to change careers and you're not really happy in your career, don't be afraid to change your career. You must keep up with your education every year. I always insisted all my partners, employees, and I grew up in a culture that's what was required. And I would think it's great today that board of directors continue their education because things change. The technology changes and the world changes. And also, I would say, set your standards high, and you may not meet them, but if you set your standards high and you meet them, you'll be a very satisfied person. And I think that the younger people today have more of an international opportunity than I had. And I always like the international side of everything.
Well, Conrad, thank you for joining today's show. It's been excellent advice hearing from you, having you give the history of what it was like as the chief accountant at the SEC. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Alan. I really enjoyed it.
We'll be right back after these messages.